Welcome back, everyone. As most of you guys know, the iPhone 8 Plus was one of my favorite phones ever, and this was at one point the last home button iPhone that Apple was making until this year with the iPhone SE2's release. And believe it or not, the iPhone 8 Plus is over 3 years old at this point. So I kind of want to take you guys back to basically when the 8 Plus came out and pretty much every single major thing that happened up until this point. And I really just want to start off with its main release. I mean, when it first came out, it was kind of, the flagship for like 10 seconds until Apple eventually announced the iPhone 10. And I think the iPhone 10 really overshadowed how good of a phone the 8 Plus was, because with the iPhone 10, obviously that was, the probably one of the biggest achievements Apple has done since the first iPhone. And since then, Apple has recycled that same design over and over again for the better or for worse. But with that iPhone 8 Plus, it was like 99% of what the iPhone 10 was. It was almost 100% identical internally besides the battery size. But because the iPhone 10 had that newer design body to it, the iPhone 8 Plus was kind of like the middle child in a way, because it kind of was. And the iPhone 8 Plus didn't really get the credit it deserved really ever. But throughout the life of it, I think at least like a year after the iPhone 8 Plus's release, I saw that phone and I was just so happy about how good of a phone it was, because I didn't even personally buy it until about a year after the release of it. And once I bought it, I was able to see that the build quality of this phone was way better than what I was expecting. I was expecting this phone to feel pretty much the same thing as the 7 Plus, and it really didn't, and I was able to go and install iOS 12 on it. And at that point, I had a really good experience with it. There was really nothing I hated about it. And I eventually did like a late 2018 review of it, and I fell in love with that phone. I think it was, I thought it was a really good phone at that time. And even a couple months later after that, we got the first beta of iOS 13, and I did the same thing. I installed it on it, and I had a really good experience with it. It's so weird. The iPhone 8 Plus has had really solid experiences with most of the softwares that have came out since its release. Typically with software releases, especially betas, we tend to have like really bad problems or a ton of bugs and stuff. That didn't really end up being the case. And with its, screen on the front, I didn't even care about the bezel, with that 5.5 inch panel on the front was still extremely fine. And it wasn't an OLED, it wasn't anything. But if you looked at the market of that time, a lot of them weren't really going to that realm. I think it was around that Galaxy S10. That's when phone manufacturers started really taking things up, and especially with the OnePlus 7 Pro. But I still think the iPhone 8 Plus, because Apple was selling it brand new, it wasn't a flagship phone. It was definitely a mid-tier phone, but I think they were selling it for $499 at one point, and that was a really good price phone to pay for that as well. Now, a couple of months later, eventually iOS 13 officially came out, and that was kind of a rocky start because iOS 13 wasn't the best. And then eventually a year later, it became a lot better. And then we eventually got iOS 14, and that's where we're at now. And I will definitely tell you, throughout the life of it, it had a really good life. Like, I kind of think the iPhone 8 Plus is kind of like the iPads of iOS, because iPads with iPadOS, you typically had a really good experience, and I didn't really have too many bugs with it. With the iPhone 8 Plus, anytime I installed something on it, anytime I got an update, it never rebooted the device, it never braked it, it never messed up. I mean, it rebooted the device, but it never, hard resetted the device or anything. The iPhone 8 Plus that I have is exactly the same as before. I did have one issue where it was like a Wi-Fi issue, but that actually ended up fixing itself. I thought it was a hardware issue, but now the Wi-Fi works, and it's been working for about a year now. So I don't know what happened there, but it works, and I'm really happy about it. Now, performance-wise and everything, I mean, I will tell you, I've done, full iOS 14 reviews of this device, and I will tell you, I don't really see the point of going from, an iPhone 8 Plus to something like an iPhone 12 Pro Max or something just based off performance, because the iPhone 8 Plus still performs really well. It has 3 gigs of RAM. It definitely isn't the fastest, and the 12 Pro Max is definitely a faster phone. But for my day-to-day operations, for things that I do, the iPhone 8 Plus is still more than enough of a phone, and it's very sad Apple doesn't sell it anymore. They sell the SE2, but the iPhone 8 Plus is a solid pickup in my opinion, for sure, in terms of the quality of phone that you're getting and in terms of the performance. Now, I think the camera department is one area where the iPhone 8 Plus still kind of shines in a lot too. You can still do 4K 60 on the back, which is great. You don't have an ultra wide sensor, but like I stated before, with that dual camera setup, that really adds so much more character to this device. And I've said it over and over again, whenever you have a phone that has a dual camera setup, you really do future proof yourself like crazy. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, compared to a lot of phones that came out this year, I mean, like the 12 Pro Max still has a triple camera setup, the iPhone 12 mini has a dual camera setup, the iPhone 12 has a dual camera setup, like they're all kind of in the range we haven't gotten quite to that quad camera setup yet for iPhones. So the 8 Plus's camera quality is still perfectly fine. I have a camera comparison. I've already done camera comparisons for this phone for years, and this phone's camera quality is still extremely good in my opinion for sure. And even the battery life, it could be better. iOS 14 has taken a toll on this thing, and weirdly enough, if you look at even this iPhone 8 Plus that came out in 2017 with its 2600 mAh battery, roughly around there, you look at the iPhone 12, that thing still has almost the same size battery as the iPhone 8 Plus. So it's very weird. It's for the better or for worse. It's kind of the same battery size. So this phone, even though, yeah, it's kind of older and stuff, there's still a lot of components that are still very similar between the two. They both have wireless charging and things like that. So the iPhone 8 Plus, as well as the other phones that came out that year, signify a lot of firsts. It signified the first time Apple went back to the glass design after the iPhone 4. And technically, I guess the iPhone 5S and SE with the glass tops. It signified the first time Apple brought wireless charging to a device. And it also signified the first time Apple went kind of bezel-less with the iPhone 10, even though that has nothing to do with the 8 Plus. That was still during the iPhone 8 Plus's release. And at one point, it was the last iPhone with a home button with Touch ID. And I definitely do think Apple for sure relied on the iPhone 8 Plus for a very long time. And even a whole 3 years later, we can still see the impact that the iPhone 8 Plus had to a lot of these other phones. And even watching and seeing how well of a phone the iPhone 8 Plus still holds up is extremely good. And I love seeing those type of things for sure. So the 8 Plus, even a whole 3 years later, still gets a thumbs up for me. So that really pretty much covers it up. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.